What's going on, everyone? Welcome to episode 224 of Littleroot Lessons. The three people you see on your screen right now share one single brain cell. I am joined this week by returning guest host Keon and new to Littleroot Lessons, first-time guest host Jacob Lintner. How you doing, buds?
I'm very good. Happy to be back. Definitely still not holding the brain cell. Happy to be here. Happy to talk about Pokemon.
I think Jacob has
Same
the brain
here.
cell. They've had it since Orlando.
Always.
It's the reason why you went to
definitely
Worlds
did not
and
have
the
the
two
brain
of
cell
us
at NAIC.
didn't.
I definitely have not had the brain cell the last week. I don't know where y'all.
Well,
we
we lent
gave
it to Anthony.
Yeah, no, we lent it to Anthony for NAIC. No, we lent it to. Did Anthony not give it back?
I haven't
Anthony
seen
just
it.
give it back by Worlds. Like once, as long as we get it back by Worlds, we're fine. But yeah, so
Oh yeah, like late July.
in general, it is usually about. So at this point of the season, it is the off season in most parts of the world, but not in Taiwan. The Taiwan National Championships, which I believe is one of the last events needed to be held pre-Worlds, just occurred this weekend. And we do have some usage stats, well, not usage stats, but some team stats from our good friends Victory Road. So first of all, congratulations to the 16 players that qualified through the Taiwan Nationals playing in this Regulation G event. And of course, shout out to the top four who had their open team sheets shared, who not only qualified for Worlds, but also earned their round one bye and their travel award. Really what we're going to do here is we're going to go through the open sheets of the top four teams and then just look at some of the other teams that we find interesting to start this all off. So Megumi went and placed first place, won the event using a very familiar team. This is Michael Zhang's Zamazenta team, and it's just continuing the trend of people winning with Michael Zhang's team not named Michael Zhang.
Yeah, it's been definitely a tumultuous regulation for him. Build his teams, update them, proceed to I believe he bubbled one of the majors that he went to. I think he got. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but he's had good performances. But the only people to really win or cut with his teams have been everyone else, and it's been tragic.
Yeah, I mean, he did finish 17th at NAIC with a version of this team. He's still having a lot of success, but yeah, just barely missing out on. I think he finished 9th at one event and then 17th again. But you can't say anything bad about the teams. These guys are killer. This is awesome. I love this.
No. I do think so. One of the cool things about these Asian events is that they are open team sheet, open nature. That's something that we don't get at TPCI events. Is we never know what the nature is, and it's cool to just really look into what get another view at what's going on with the teams. I think the bold Galarian Moltres just getting insanely bulky with that. Same with the Impish Zamazenta going for a defensive boosting nature instead of a speed boosting nature. And I think the only other thing that's super interesting with this team is the Terra on Fluttermane being Terra Normal.
Yeah, it seems like we're just... I guess it's a very good adaptation to the rampant run that Shadow Rider has been on, because realistically, especially the versions with Clefairy, where you opt for the Terra Fairy, Fluttermane, while it's frail, on the HP and the physical bulk, its special bulk is still, absolutely no joke. And so if you just pop that normal Terra, you kind of aren't threatened at all anymore by that restricted, whereas you can click the Icy Winds, the Moonblast, you can mitigate the redirectors with Thunder Wave, which is another interesting pick here, over what would usually be either Shadow Ball or even Taunt on those speed boosting Flutter sets. But I think the whole thing is just kind of anti-Shadow Rider, anti-redirection, just trying to mitigate that entire archetype, which was very popular heading into these tournaments.
Yeah, especially without a
Shadow Rider. Yes. And speaking of Shadow Riders, Ayabe went and came in second place using at this point, I say this is the relatively standard Galore Shadow team. This is a Calm Mind instead of a Nasty Plot Calyrex. You get super bulky with those defense boosts as well, next to the Clefairy. Then you have the Water, Fire, Grass trio of Incineroar, Urshifu, and Rillaboom, plus the all-important Raging Bolt with the Assault Vest. One of the things that is interesting between at least first place and second place from what we've seen is that both teams have went with the Terra Grass Choice Band Rillaboom.
Yeah, I love that Rillaboom. I think it's so cool. I think
I've never ran it.
Any Rillaboom that can just one-hit KO a Flutter Mane, Cali Shadow, like you just pick up so many KOs if you position it well. And I think that's part of why it really fits on this team especially, is because you do have the Raging Bolt for your Electro Webs, you have your Incineroar to support the Rillaboom while the Rillaboom is also supporting the rest of the team, which is really cool. And you can even do like Rillaboom Clefairy stuff and just start clicking Follow Me Woodhammer into everything. It's just so strong.
I also think that given the structure of these tournaments being closed team sheet up until I believe top 8, the main important thing here is the fact that these teams are kind of already like predetermined. These specific archetypes have had success, even these like cores to be specific. This is like basically exactly what Adi ran at LA, and I have that set ingrained into my mind. I digress. The whole thing with this here is going for the choice band on the Rillaboom is that surprise factor, I feel like, because looking at these balanced teams, you're thinking, oh, this is just going to be a tanky Rillaboom trying to pivot around. The Urshifu's probably scarfed and, just clicking U-turn, the parting shot, fake out, the whole shebang. Jacob in my favorite game. But coming off of the Terra Grass choice banded helping hand Woodhammers that come out of nowhere, it's taking KOs that were previously like unconceived just turn one. And I think the surprise factor of closed team sheet is kind of what lets these less orthodox sets climb to the top and then continue to have success as this got second place.
Yeah. And we've seen, especially in the Zamazenta teams, that they do a lot of the Zamazenta teams that we've seen, especially like those Moltres versions, have used the choice band on Rillaboom. It's just different seeing it on a more balancy team. I believe it was on. I was talking with Charlotte this weekend where they were saying that they use Assault Vest Rillaboom for the first time, and it was nice knowing that you could live certain hits without terroring. And for me, it was but they were missing, like, I couldn't pick up this Miracle Seed Grassy Glide hit or this Miracle Seed Woodhammer hit that I was so used to clicking.
Meadow Plate,
yes. Meadow Plate. And I was on the other end of it. I've pretty much only played Assault Vest Rillaboom to the point where if I have to pair Rillaboom with another Assault Vest Mon, I will and this is probably more of a detriment to me, I will balance out whether or not do I really want the other Mon or do I really want the Rillaboom, because I'm so used to playing Assault Vest on Rillaboom that my brain kind of breaks if I try to play it another way. But to see this specifically choice band Rillaboom do super well on two different teams is super interesting. And maybe it ends up being like a threat for Worlds where people are like, I don't need my Rillaboom to fake out. I need it to, knock things out. Like, one move is a priority move that stops you from moving. The other version is a priority move that stops your Pokemon from doing anything the entire battle because you took its HP, all of its HP out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the cool thing between the first and the second place teams are that I feel like the Rillabooms come to choice band in different ways. You have the Zamazenta team where the Rillaboom is choice band because next to the Chien-Pao, it's just doing silly damage. It is there because the Chien-Pao activates it rather than you're kind of there out of necessity. But on the second place team, the one we're looking at right now, the Raging Bolt, you really do want the Assault Vest on it because your Kyogre matchup outside of the Raging Bolt, you can be a little bit suspect, especially if they have, redirection against the Rillaboom or Terra Grass on the Kyogre. But the Rillaboom then needs another item, and instead of going with something like Meadow Plate, you say, no, I have enough support for the rest of the team. And even as Urshifu, as someone who's used a lot of Choice Scarf and Focus Sash Urshifu, it really can feel a little underwhelming with damage sometimes. So having your special nuke in your Kali Shadow and your physical nuke in Rillaboom all being supported by this Clefairy, all of a sudden, it's super hard to switch into either of those.
Yeah, no, definitely. Moving on to the third place team, this is Seng Yan Rong, who also goes by Tony, running a Koraidon team with the Ogerpon Cornerstone and a Banded Entei. So we are 3 for 3 on choice band Pokemon in the top 4 so far.
Yeah, just being able to have those physical nukes right off rip is so important. The thing with Koraidon here is that it looks to be going for a bit of a faster set, opting out for the Flame Charge in favor of U-Turn, and as we can see, a Jolly Nature. I haven't done much experimenting with Koraidon in this regulation, but the people who I've been building with, who have been using it, mainly ran it Adamant, going for Flame Charge just to hit like a certain speed tier that after a +1, you can just kind of deal with anything. But having the fast natural pivot and being able to just deny the stat drops when you stay in, I think is super important to this team. Another thing, I believe I saw this team, I can't remember who exactly was running it. I think it was Mikael Derbest, right at like the beginning of the regulation when I was initially testing out like Ice Rider comps alongside Jess. I played in a couple Limitless tours, and I think in like a Himi tour, I ran into this exact 6, and it was so challenging there, and clearly still very dominant right now. That Entei is no joke.
Yeah, I think running Jolly on your
I'd say with
to it really lets you run to lean more into the bulk of that Pokemon. This is still a restricted legendary with restricted defensive stats, and outside of fairy types, Fighting Dragon have a lot of really, really nice resistances that let you, against opposing Tailwind teams, eat a hit, get your Choice Band Entei in safely, and then you can just start clicking your Terra Normal E-Speeds next to your Chen Pal. I think that's something that's been really cool to see throughout the format is how we've wavered back and forth between physical and special damage. And really, we are seeing now the resurgence of strong, non-restricted physical attackers that, alongside a Chen Pao or with Redirection, can just fire off a lot of attacks. And as long as they're immune to Intimidate, like Entei and Koraidon, they're hard to stop. There's no physical assault vest. You're going to be taking a full Terrifier Flare Blitz with Sword of Ruin every single time.
Yeah, and then you throw on the Orichal Compulse boost, you throw in the sun damage, and that's the other thing I was going to say with it. You have four of the 6 Pokemon on this team love being in the sun. You have you have 2 Photosynthesis Mons. Of course, the Koraidon not only sets the sun, but gets an attack boost because of it. And giving Entei the sun boost with Sacred Fire, and Flare Blitz, it's kind of like a dual sort of Terra in a sense, where you have the actual Terra normal to get the stab boost on the extreme speed, but the weather boost is kind of acting like another Terra for your fire type attacks, at least in terms of those damage multipliers. And then, of course,
it's basically like a glorified Stellar Terra because you're not really clicking Stomping Tantrum that often with the coverage options like Rock Pawn and all the other moves that you have in your arsenal. Like, you're kind of only clicking the Sun Flare Blitz or the Terra Normal E-Speeds.
Yeah. And honestly, what Jacob, you were saying, where you have 2 Pokemon here with the Clear Amulet Koraidon and the Inner Focus Entei that don't really care about Intimidate. The Ogerpon, Ivy Cudgel crits 30% of the time. And so 30% of the time, your Ogerpon also doesn't care about Intimidate, because you're going to be clicking that Ivy Cudgel most of the time as well. Throwing your 2 special attackers, and the only time you're ever really getting anything out of Intimidate is with that Chen Pao, which honestly, at this point, with next to the Koraidon, next to the Entei, is there to either click Protect to just stay alive, or, Sucker Punch something to just soften it up, or to clean up an extreme speed or Sacred Fire attack from the previous turn. This is if my brain didn't melt whenever I attempted to use any Sun teams, I think this would be a super cool team to try. Alas, I turn into someone who doesn't even know what a Pikachu is when I try Sun, so I probably will never pick this team up.
Yeah. It just hits too hard, too fast for me. I love clicking Parting Shot. This is not it.
Well, the next team is a team that I think can speak to all three of us, because on this team, all you were doing is clicking Fake Out, Parting Shot, Fake Out, Follow Me, and a setup move for about 12 turns until your Terapagos is so freaking strong that it's just going to take 4 KOs in 2 turns. Fourth place is Ku Chao Chen, who also goes by FM, and this is your this is your classic Covert Cloak, Firewater Grass setup Terapagos team. Honestly, I think one of the most interesting things about this team is the fact that the Incineroar actually has Flare Blitz, and this might be one of the few Incineroars that we've seen in Regulation G that actually wants to be a fire type.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that the other interesting part of this team, I guess, is that you have 4 if you count Rillaboom, Pokemon that all pretty regularly run Taunt, but they haven't chosen that in favor of, running Shadow Ball on Fluttermane, Aqua Jet on Urshifu, and Flare Blitz on Incineroar. So your answer into the really popular Cali Shadow Clefairy stuff is, or appears to be, just you set up before they do, or you set up alongside them and they can't Astral Barrage your Terapagos. You really do get a lot of value out of that Covert Cloak to not have to worry about any secondary stat drops or fake outs, to let you get Calm Minds up a lot faster, especially if you force the Calyrex to Terra. But other than that, yeah, this is a balanced Billy's dream. It's just fake out, pivot, until eventually your Terapagos gets to +6 and you're good.
Yeah.
I think the craziest thing about this is going back to the format that this was played in. This feels like such an honest team. There's no, as you mentioned, surprise taunts. It could really be on the Urshifu or the Incin or the Flutter or the Rillaboom if it weren't running AV. There's so many mystery factors at play. I think that it's almost just a mind game in and of itself to just run the most standard sets and just kind of catch your opponents off guard. It's they just have the most standard sets of all time and just beat me because it was kind of a read off.
Yeah.
I think this is just a very tried and true archetype, just the double fake out, pivot, redirect while I set up, and then don't crit me while I go and just knock out everything in 2 turns after setting up for 12. I love it.
Yeah, I love the fact that this is a team with 4 protects. I love having protects on my team. Recently, I've been using Miraidon most of the format, and that is a team where if you're clicking protect, something really, really bad happened in your game, you want to be clicking damage moves all the time. So that was a culture shock to me, where it was wait, this is okay to only have 2 protects on the team. This is, I'm you have 2 pivot moves, you have Icy Wind speed control, a ton of priority, a setup move, all these protects. This is something where I'm going to just grind the game out. And yeah, I'd say the only thing I can make out of this team is I do not understand how this ever beats a well-piloted Zamazenta. And with that being said, it makes sense that this team then came in 4th and the Zamazenta team won. So
that's fair.
Outside of these 4 relatively standard teams, we have a lot of fun stuff from our top 8 and top 16 teams. Again, we don't have any of the pace for these teams, so we are only going off of these 6 Pokemon. There were a few teams that that caught my eye immediately, but we'll let you two are the guests. we'll have these teams here. Just call them out. Let us know what catches your eye first.
Tinkaton.
Yeah, we're going
without
there.
a doubt.
Okay. 14th place, Wang Meng Wei. This team, it's Terapagos, Sinistra, Skeledirge, Iron Valiant, Cresselia, and Tinkaton. This is a team This is a team that would be like the team for Littleroot Lessons host Carter Noble, because it's his favorite starter and honestly his favorite Gen 9 Pokemon with Skeledirge and Tinkaton on it. I'm going to guess this is a setup Terapagos.
Yeah,
I think that makes the most sense. Really, given the yeah,
it's really built around setting up Terapagos. I assume the Sinistra is going to be hospitality. It could be heat proof because there are a couple of fire weaknesses on the team, but you assume you're just trying to heal that guy back up. Your Skeledirge is going to be your Zamazenta answer. The Iron Valiant, I want to know what what that set is. I'm hoping it's like Feint, Wide Guard. You can run Dual Stab, you can run Imprison Trick Room, you can run Taunt. There's so many cool moves that guy gets. And then, of course, Cresselia does Cresselia things. It's just Sinistra if they have fire types. And Tinkaton, I love that pick. I have no idea why it's there. I have no idea why the Tinkaton is not just a Rillaboom, but I'm so happy that this team got top 16. That's so exciting.
Yeah, I think
the only thing I can think of for that Tinkaton is Moldbreaker Fake Out for the Rise of Farigiraf. That's the only reason I see it. Like, also, Fairy Steel is a generally okay defensive typing, I feel, especially with, as we discussed, like, those instants dropping the fire moves makes it so that, like, what are you doing in a 1v1 against, like, a Fairy Steel type? You're just clicking knock off, and then, boom, it's just a resisted hit. You can't do anything. I would be very shocked if this weren't a Comment Terapagos, given how much this core seems to focus on the longevity of it between the what we can only presume to be hospitality healing on Sinistra, the Lunar Blessings off of Cresselia, and the fake out support within like any given situation. You can just click that fake out unless there's psychic terrain. And Skeledirge, which pretty commonly runs Will-O-Wisp just to be able to deter those scary physical attackers in the meta, such as Ice Rider and especially Zamazenta for the turtle. I think very interesting.
The Skeledirge is literally here just for the fighting restricted matchups. Skeledirge has an unbelievable matchup into both Zacian and Zamazenta with the Will-O-Wisp, with the ability to be resisted to the Steel Stab and be immune to the Fighting Stab that these Pokemon run so often. And these are Pokemon that those are two Pokemon that usually give Terapagos some trouble. So to have a Pokemon there that's pretty much a one-stop shop, I'm going to pretty much single-handedly fix this matchup, or at least turn the matchup from like a 30-70 into a 50-50. That's really important to have on this team. If I had to guess what the Tinkaton's doing, I do think it's Moldbreaker Fake Out. And then if I had to guess, it would be, or at least what I would do with this team, I would have, of course, Gigaton Hammer, and then I would have Feint and Thunder Wave. Tinkaton has a decent enough speed stat where at least like you can go and abuse it to use Thunder Wave decently enough. And with these set up Terapagos, or just set up Pokemon in general, one of the things you can do is to try to stall out the latter stage of the game with like protect with one Mon and get a hit in with the other to try to like chip it down. And the feint on that the Tinkaton can potentially have can break those protects and to really force your opponent into a position where they really can't defend once the Terapagos is ready to go. That's my guess, at least, on what I think it would do. Jacob, what speaks to you here?
Yeah, I do think the idea of double feint is really cool on that team. I think you just had your mouse over it. The Iron Treads team, a couple of spots above that, with Iron Treads and Araquanid, I think is so cool. Araquanid's one of those Pokemon that immediately, when I feel like when everybody found out that it was coming back, we all thought, oh man, Water Bubble, Terra Water, Wave Crash. It doesn't get Wave Crash, but Liquidation is still really, really strong. You could throw Clear Amulet on that guy. It's the perfect Psy Spam counter or at least the perfect Armor Rouge counter, because it's slower. You hit it under Trick Room or you Wide Guard outside of Trick Room. It does so many cool things. It walls Cali Ice, which I think is awesome for a Miraidon team. And your Iron Treads that presumably is going to be Clear Amulet, get a speed boost, wins you the mirror because you outspeed and just KO the opposing Miraidon. It's half a classic Miraidon team with the Whimsicott, Farigiraf, and Incineroar is there a decent bit, but two Pokemon that I think are just so cool. And I have not really seen, especially the Iron Treads, really much success all season. So it's really cool to be able to see it shine on such a big stage.
Yeah. I really like this team. Again, I've been playing Miraidon. I was one of the Araquanid players that you were just describing. I was like, Araquanid with P2 or Farig. This is going to be so good. And what really killed Araquanid or stopped it from doing super well I know a few people ran it at Portland, but what stopped it from doing well in Regulation F is the power level just wasn't enough for this more open dex format with Pokemon like Landorus, Raging Bolt, Rillaboom, and such. Like, I feel if we had Araquanid in the base Scarlet Violet decks, like if it was a Reg A through Reg C Mon, it would have been one of the best Mons and the best comp. It would have been what I would have ran for the entirety of that era because it's an amazing partner with the Farigiraf. And of course, the Iron Treads. Great Tusk was the number one Donphan like Paradox form, and no one even touched Treads. And now I haven't seen a Great Tusk in honestly about a year at this point, and Iron Treads just got someone their Worlds invite. So how quickly the world changes. It's like, from past to future.
Yeah, I do really like the Araquanid on this team. I was also very much an Araquanid believer. And like you, I've been spending a lot of time grinding card ladder with Miraidon. Just kind of feels good to turn your brain off and click Electro Drift and Volt Switch. And so looking at this team, like the first thing that comes to mind is, oh my god, 2 new things I can click Discharge next to. Because you have the Iron Treads as your ground type, which really fits in well on these teams, and then the Araquanid, which can just click Wide Guard, wall out the opposing Calyrex, and also not get hit by your own Discharge. And just being able to nuke everything on the field without a care in the world is exactly what Miraidon wants to do. And I think to that point, this team really took the dominant core of like Miraidon, Whimsicott, Farigiraf plus ground type and innovated on it in a really unprecedented way, and I love to see that.
Yeah, I say the last team out of these that I'm really interested in talking about is 7th place Chu Chi Hung, who goes by Suyan. Probably butchered that, and if I did, I'm very sorry. We've been seeing a lot of these Necrozma Dawnwing not a lot, but we've been seeing enough Necrozma Dawnwings popping up on the super, super hard Trick Room teams with like the Hisuian Lilligant plus Torkoal, the Gallade, the Indeedee, and like an Ursaluna, usually the Hisuian Ursaluna. And it's one of those things where we really haven't, not only have we not really seen hard Trick Room in Regulation G, but like we actually just haven't seen it, period. At least in the TPCI events, it's not been something that's been popping up all too much. And it makes me think that a player like a Ben Grismer, that Chef is in the background with him and the rest of Bruno's Trick Room cult, have this team in their back pocket. Like if Ben Grismer Day 2's Worlds with this exact 6 here, everyone's going to be looking at it and saying, yeah, we should have seen this coming. And I think it's like going into this Worlds meta, knowing that this hard Trick Room team does exist and that it got someone top 8 at their national tournament to qualify for Worlds. You're going to see this on stream at Worlds. Jacob, you might be playing against this team, and I think it's just at least like if you're prepping for Worlds, have lines into a team like into this 6 right here, because you don't like the hard Trick Room teams are always matchup check teams. It's did you prep for Trick Room or did you not? Just like how Spam and Dozo were in previous formats. And since it hasn't been doing well, I feel like people really haven't had that in the back of their mind. This is front and center right now. Like, make sure you prep for this so you aren't caught with your pants down at Worlds.
I hate this team.
Any other topics or teams or... I know you do.
No,
I know you were mentioning like
let's
look at the other fun teams, and then you proceeded to scroll past Spam.
Yeah,
you ran into this
team. Yeah, round 3, I think, of NAIC. I ran into this exact 6. I assume it's probably the same team. And it was exactly that. It was, I just don't know my lines into Necrozma Dawnwings well enough, and I misplayed like 2 turns, and oops, that's the whole set. As with every Lily Cole variation, it's impossible to cover for both the Lily Cole and for the hard Trick Room versions. Plus, they have a lot of normal types, so if I was playing Trapagos, but if you ran into a Kali Shadow, you have switch-ins for that. It's just tough. I don't want to talk about it, and I will choose in my Worlds prep to not believe in this team so that I don't have to face it. We manifest a Necrozma-less Worlds run.
I am not letting you. I am not letting you go.
I'm going to find you on ladder. I'm going to find you on ladder, and I'm going to be running this team.
Find you on ladder. I'm just going to take a train to your apartment. Be like, best of 3 me right now.
Show up with your Switch outside, like, please.
Like a 90s sitcom, instead of the into the boombox, it's just my Switch playing like the gym leader theme on like max volume. No,
I'll cry.
Your poor neighbors.
I'll straight up cry.
No, it's a Switch. It's a Switch speaker. They can't hear it. Yeah. Anything else besides the war crime that I just brought up?
I feel like everything else here seems to standard.
Top 32, there was a Lugia Araquanid Sableye. A little bit further down this page.
Not Lugia Sableye,
that team's pretty cool. Same reason that Araquanid. Yeah.
You didn't even mention the Gouging Fire.
Well, yeah, because it's like the 4th.
Okay, yeah. We have to talk about your demon. We can talk about mine now. Fine.
At least Chance Hines didn't run this.
I just think it's a really, really cool team.
So this team here, we officially named the segment the Carter Corner, because usually what would happen when we cover any tournament is Jay and I go in depth with these top 8 teams. Carter will jump in, he'll give his spiel, and at the end we'll be like, Carter, what did you find? And he'll go and say something like, I found a Pikachu that finished better than like every single like Entei in this tournament, and that like went 6-3. That happened. Actually, I think it was. I don't think it was. It might have been. It wasn't Orlando. I think it was like the Reg F tournament for Orlando. It was right after the tournament that Tio won with Articuno, and it was everyone was like, "Oh, Articuno," and then Articuno just did nothing. And Carter found a Pikachu team that placed higher than the highest placing Articuno team, and so like this right here is a Carter Quarter team. Any team with KonqFe he loves, and I love seeing like the KonqFe Lugia. We know from Chance Hines that this is a good enough combination in this format to do something once you get all those boosts and you keep the multi-scale going. Gouging Fire is one of the 2 New England favorites of the Regulation F. So always great to see that. And we were just talking about Araquanid, so that's also cool. While we're down here, I'd like to bring up this team, the Miraidon Blastoise team, which is super cool. This is just, Blastoise, Furgraph, my favorite bird, Pelipper, the bird that won NAIC. Cry haters. This team, it's not good, but it's definitely great.
Yeah, I very much struggle to see what Blastoise does on this team outside of maybe Fake Out, but I think I just
Scarf Water Spout next in the rain.
Oh, and then when Reg H comes, you just swap it for a Kyogre.
Yeah, pretty much. You get 2 free spots. You not only get to do the Kyogre thing with the spout, but you also get to free up you conglomerate.
Yeah, that was just completely out of my brain. But I won't be a little bit of a personal anecdote. I've kind of completely corroded my brain when it comes to Blastoise, because in Sword and Shield Cart Ladder, my favorite thing to do was just go on with White Herb Blastoise and Simple Beam Latios and just click Shell Smash and then G-Max. It was a beautiful thing. It worked like every 10 games.
Yeah, no, I miss Sword and Shield Blastoise. It was so good. It was like one of my draft league MVPs in our series 8 draft league. It was like unbelievable. Gmax Blastoise is unbelievable. And then of course it was also amazing in the single restricted formats. Not as strong in the dual restricted GS Cup format, but yeah, always a super fun Pokemon. And then Gen 9 came, and it's bad now, which is sad, but is what it is.
Free my boy.
We still love it.
Yes. So moving on to the second part of our episode after covering Taiwan, because we knew it wasn't going to be a lot. Just in the time, I asked us to put our heads together and each of us to bring one thing we learned from NAIC, whether it was certain item choices, certain spreads, just the general gist of the meta, where we think things are going from here. So, Jacob, you can lead it off.
Okay,
what did you learn?
It's a kind of a twofold. It's even though the format is so, it doesn't feel solved, but it feels very kind of stable at the current moment. You have the Calyrex Ice Rider team that won, that has been pretty much the exact same team for the entirety of the format so far. People know about Firewater Grass setup, all that stuff. But even though the format feels very stable, creativity is so, and honestly, because it's so stable, creativity has been rewarded so heavily throughout NAIC and the teams that we just saw for the Taiwan Nationals. Michael Zhang, we already mentioned, finished 17th with his very, very cool take on Zamazenta. You had that Electabuzz team that Adi and Alex Underhill ran. They both finished in top 16. And of course, my favorite player at NAIC, Sam Pletcher, finishing 35th. Guy gets top 64 with Sandy Shocks on a Koraidon team. I saw that man beat 2 Calyrex Ice Rider teams, bringing Sandy Shocks into that matchup. It's incredible what he can do, but it's so cool what creative team building does in a format that feels very, very stable to give you an advantage, just because you have a certain Pokemon or a certain idea that people just don't have as much experience against.
I think, and so we saw that with both of our New Englanders who made day 2 last week. Sam was, Kiana and I mentioned it on the pod, Sam was the only person to bring Sandy Shocks and Umbreon to day 2. And I believe Dawe was the only Tinglu and the only Dozo in day 2 as well. Yeah. So, Sam definitely got more style points because, Evolution plus a Sandy Shocks, a Pokemon that we didn't see even in Reg B, when we thought, okay, this could be something. Sandy Shocks did nothing. To bring those 2 Pokemon, definitely the cool points there. But on Dawe's end, using two Pokemon that are established, like these are good Pokemon. Like Dozo without Tatsu won NAIC the previous year. We know this is a good Pokemon, and just being like, okay, these are good Pokemon that aren't being used, but that doesn't mean that they're not good anymore. Like, having the ability to look past the top 20 on the usage, or just the standard, this is what we're doing for every single team, and whether it's finding the Pokemon that is like the specific mon to fix your matchups, is super important. Like, Keon, I think you had some DMs from Sam like that explained his Sandy Shocks usage. If you want to go into that, if you
yeah, for sure,
stuff.
I can actually pull that up. He
Yeah.
just has such a way of like explaining things that just make it sound like so simple. So basically, as I was talking to Sam, who I believe is coming out with a team report at some point soon, if it isn't already out at the time of this dropping, basically took the core that was successful at, I believe, yeah, he took the team from the PR special event that won from Canepa, the Koraidon, Golden Go, Rillaboom core, and he was looking at all of this, and he's like, oh yeah, like Grassy Seed, Golden Go, I'm just going to add that to help with the Ice Rider matchup. And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? Like, Terra Water, you completely, like, just stomped on an entire restricted. And then looking at the kind of Life Orb special sweeper side, the angle that Kenneth took was Walking Wake, and looking at Sandy Shocks, which is kind of like the complete opposite end of the spectrum in terms of like coverage and everything. It was like, these are two entirely different mons that kind of accomplish similar things. What was the thought process behind it? And he's like, you're right, they are the same, but it gives him a better defensive profile into Miraidon. That ground immunity and the outspeed is super huge for that matchup. Having more of a threat into Tornadus, being able to just click a delete button. Whereas Hydro Steam is powerful, but it probably won't get there unless you opt for the Draco Meteor. And then keeping coverage on Incineroar in that slot. You know, what Walking Wake was doing, but more for the team. And the way he just explained it, I was like... So, going off of that point, I think the main thing that I learned from NAIC is the most successful people in these restricted formats seem to be those creative, iterative team builders who are just willing to throw ideas at the wall until they stick, as long as they pick the core that they know is going to be strong. Another example of this, I had the pleasure of talking to Yichun in DMs about the Woqian Kyogre team that he was piloting alongside Justin and Shiliang Tang. And I was like, because I was curious about running it at the local that we had over here, the Grassroots, on Thursday. So I reached out to him, and he's like, as you can see, the team is very powerful, but it comes with experience. He actually told me that Shiliang was playing with the team for 2 months before, like, as soon as Showdown Ladder dropped, this was already an idea in the builder, and it was just being workshopped and workshopped and workshopped. And I think NAIC happening just about a month into the format was where the iterative team building really began to shine. All of these teams that people had kind of on the back burner, you know, bringing what might be very strong and oppressive into the early format, and then sitting back, looking at that from an outside perspective, and just thinking, what is really niche and what can really match up well into this meta. And I think that's what comes with the sort of picks that we get in the Umbreon and the Sandy Shocks, and especially Dawei's team utilizing Stealth Rock Ting-Lu on a team full of disruption. It's just, it counteracts so many important teams and archetypes. And coming at this point in the format where, as you said, it's very stable, it kind of feels like a any given tournament kind of angle, because something succeeds differently every single day. Like, there were 0 Terapagos, like, even in, I believe, like, top 16 at LA, and then there went on to be 3 in cut at NAIC. It just really comes down to the players and the experience that they've had with those teams.
Yeah. I think, and what you were just saying goes into what my point really. The format, it's I think the best player, it's again a bit of a two-parter. I think the people who are going to do well at Worlds, the format seems to work in cycles, and it is a very like cyclical yet matchup checky rock paper scissorsy format where okay, Zama is good into the Terapagos teams. Terapagos is great into the Kali Shadow. The Kali Shadow is always great once all those fighting types come back, and it keeps on like cycling that way. And then, of course, you have Pokemon such as, of course, Calyrex Ice, to a lesser extent, Kyogre, who are just, those are Pokemon that are, you're just going 50-50s into pretty much everything. And while you don't have, like, unbelievable matchups into certain, like, in most cases, into certain restricteds, you also, there really isn't a bad matchup. So, I think the player who does win is either going to be the player who calls what part of the cycle of that fighting type restricted Terapagos, a Calyrex Shadowy aspect that the meta will be in at the time of Worlds, or it's going to be just Calyrex Ice again because it's the most consistent restricted. With that being said, these are also teams that you can have your set core of 3 or 4 Pokemon to just your restricted, and then like the mons that work best with your restricted, and then you can throw on a tech mon for a specific matchup. What we talked about with that top 16 team, the Terapagos team, and in Taiwan, like they throw on the Skeledirge is only coming versus Kali S and like Zamazenta and like Zacian if it's there. Might not even really. It's not even. It could work against Koraidon, but it's not even really amazing into that. And like you're pretty much saying, like the mirror match, I'm not bringing this. Definitely not bringing this against the Calyrex Shadow. Not going to bring this against Kyogre. Not like against Dawn Wings. I'm not going to bring this or any of the Necrozma teams. But I'm literally just going to say, here's a slot for this specific matchup where my 30-70 on the rock paper scissors scale, this one Pokemon can maybe make it a 50-50. And I can try to use that one spot to like break that cycle and be able to get better matchups. Kind of it's like a conglomeration of everything that we've been saying, with like knowing which Pokemon to use and not having the hubris where you're allowing yourself to bring this like a Skeledirge, or we've seen Chandler and Cerulege in the same role. Understanding where the matchups are and playing your matchups enough to know this is the definite weak spot of my team, and this is the Pokemon that can really do well to try to, again, make it where I can play Redifit, and it's not just a lost cause. So, like, that's what I definitely learned.
Talking to the point of, like, consistency in the meta, it's very easy to bring a team to a regional that you can comfortably, like, 6-3 or 5-4 with, like, if you're just going for points. But I do think that making those calls for those matchup checks is what separates a team from, for the most part, can separate a team from just barely making it to day 2, to giving yourself a fighting chance. Kind of having a pick that throws a wrench directly into the carefully crafted lines that people have prepared themselves for with all of these different teams. It's kind of just a walking matchup check to be able to throw in something that completely de-incentivizes a certain dominant team's matchup into you. And I think that's exactly what the picks we discussed accomplished.
I know we have a little more time. Any other things like that, like learned? Jacob, I know you were there playing, so any experiences you learned playing, besides that you just, need to practice your hard trick room matchup?
It's know your Necrozma Dawn Wings matchup. And I think the other thing that's really cool about this format, where, to be fully honest, I still don't like Regulation G. I don't like a single restricted format. The rock paper scissorsy nature of it, the cyclical nature, it just doesn't click for me the same way that balance heavy, Reg C, Reg F near the end of it. That's where I like to sit. With that being said, the Regulation G format, I think, has given us some of the best pure Pokemon being played that I've seen. I think we can all agree the NAIC finals between Patrick Connors and Aurelian Sola was maybe the best
Mhm.
set of Pokemon, at the very least, the best finals that we've gotten in the entire generation, if not, going back to the last restricted format. We are seeing some incredibly high level play. Going back to Los Angeles too, Montana Mott, the way that all of these players have been able to pilot known teams, known archetypes that we were prepared for. The Cali Ice team that Patrick Connors ran, has been pretty much the exact same all format, but he just played it better than literally everyone else in the world on that day. And so that's my other takeaway, is that yes, you need a team that is creative, that you have a lot of experience with, and that is using good Pokemon, but that experience piece of it, of knowing your lines, being able to kind of drill those matchups, and being able to make the plays on the day of, I think that still outweighs pretty much every other aspect of this game, when push comes to shove.
Yeah, I think that the mind game that comes with playing teams that can have good or bad matchups into each other is so important. I do think that Regulation G as a meta has been a little bit too cyclical for my liking, because as soon as I like something, it becomes obsolete, and then I have to wait another month. But I'm not going to an event in that next month, kind of thing. But being able to just kind of force your opponent into situations is something that a higher powered format and more non-standard Pokemon picks allows for you to do. And I do agree that the NAIC finals was one of the most clear cut and intentional ways I've ever seen a Pokemon set be played. I will say though, Calvin and I talk about this. Close second last year, I believe, at NAIC. Can't remember if it was junior or senior finals, but the Oranguru Torkoal.
That was juniors. That was so good.
And here we are again, weather games, clicking spread moves that kill.
Yep.
So really,
mons that don't do damage.
We know what's important here.
Gen 3 weather setters that got their weather setting ability in Sun and Moon because they forgot to put Ninetales and Politoed in base game.
So specific.
Man, I'm still waiting for the day Politoed's good.
It was good. You were in diapers you were in diapers back then, but it was.
That's just crazy. You're right.
That is right. Yeah.
I do not remember all that. I was still clicking 4 attacking moves back then.
I mean, it was it was good in it would have been like Gen 6. It was good like when we played on XY.
All right, I was not in diapers, but I might have had a bedtime. All right, so chill out.
I had to. I'm sorry, Keon.
It's okay. I completely understand.
Yeah,
I deserve that.
As the old man on this specific set of guests. I'm usually the middle child, but on this one, as the old man, I gotta get that in there.
I gotta get sun.
And
I will say, holding out.
To our old man too.
What if Politoed gets a mega?
I thank you, because I'm not going to say what I was about to say, because even though I swore on this pod, we do have kids who listen, so I'm going to keep this as PG-13 as possible. Yeah, no, I will say, Keon, you're not alone. I know Carter would love for Politoed to be good, so I would, just shut the hell up about Pelipper.
It's good bird.
Maybe it'll get a mega if megas come back.
We are getting the game with megas next year. That game will not have any online capabilities, hopefully. So probably we won't see the mega evolution in a VGC match. But who knows? Who can say?
It'll be there in spirit. It'll click agile style or whatever is going to happen in this game that we've heard nothing about since February.
It happens. Well,
agile
honestly,
we'll blast.
Bring that up. We will. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Absolutely.
You should work at Game Freak.
You can be everyone's uncle at Game Freak.
Yeah, you just win worlds, and then you just your post game interview just be like, "Hire me, Game Freak. I have ideas.
I got so many good ones."
Straight in.
That's how we do
Polytoad.
it. It's like, see the stat spread for Screamtail. It's now 999
It's
in every single
Buff
stat.
Screamtail
Polytoad.
2.
Screamtail 2 Sand/Evolution. These are my demands.
Yep. You saw
No,
the
literally, world champions should just get to like add a Pokemon patch update. They deserve it.
They should.
I mean, not a world champion, but Aaron Zhang pretty much did that by them going and fixing, adding 10 accuracy to Will-O-Wisp in between Gen 5s and Gen 6 because of Worlds. So we've already seen that.
That's the bad way to do it.
Is it?
Well, he lost.
I mean, I still miss that thing,
that.
so.
Yeah, well, you know, someone had to take the bullet.
So maybe runner-ups get to make changes. If you just if no bulk Screamtail, then they'll buff it.
Yeah, just throwing. I mean, also Aaron just graduated from Stanford today, so I think he's doing just fine.
Yeah, congratulations! I saw that post. So awesome.
Saw our very own Dr. Aaron trailer there as well.
Mm-hmm.
The homies always supporting the homies, just like how the two of you have been supporting me the past couple of weeks. All my other homies, I had to support them because, you know, life gets in the way. With that being
Completely
said,
understand.
I think unless you guys have anything else to cover on like things you learned, I think we're good.
Think we're all set.
Yeah.
Okay, I have to remember how to do the outro again, but while we're doing that, we're going to go in order. Keon, tell us where you can find you.
I'm again mainly just on Twitter at KonqVGC, KonqVGC. I'm hoping to start up streaming this summer, at least a little bit, and you can definitely look for streams on there. I'll be posting whenever I do go live. And yeah, that's about it from me. Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Okay, Jacob.
Again, just on Twitter at the Jacob Lintner. You can find me at any New England locals running Screamtail just as much as I can. And again, thank you so much for bringing me on the podcast. It's been a blast.
Of course. And as always, you can find me specifically at VGC. You can find us on Twitter as a podcast as a whole at LR Lessons. You can watch all of our episodes, the podcast episodes every Monday, the Littleroot Records every Wednesday, Jay's Draft League stuff. We have, of course, Carter is not only doing his Genlock, the scripted Nuzlocke series, throughout every generation of Pokemon, but Carter is also our representative in the NK games, so you'll be able to watch that as well on our YouTube. You can also listen to us on the Monday Pod, on Spotify, Apple Music, and any other pod chasers that you use. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe on all of our services. Give us those 5 stars. Ring that bell icon, as the kids say. I think the kids say. Keon, did the kids say that?
I do think so. Something along those lines. Yeah,
close enough for me. And also, if you'd like to support us, you can support us on our Patreon, just like the absolutely wonderful people, Johnny Bravo Sr. and Papa Swish, or you could become one of our Discord supporters, just like Smeargle. As always, thank you very much, everyone, for listening and watching, and we hope you have a lovely week. Bye now.